guys are in for such a treat. I know that we usually do these legal things all the time, but today is going to be a special time for us. And I'd like to introduce what we're actually doing, because I know most of us are like, what in the world is CVAR doing? Well, we thought that we would do something a little different and bring some lightheartedness to being a real estate professional. And so they asked me to be the host over Real People, Real Talk. And so what is Real People, Real Talk about? Basically, we are going to be showcasing different real estate professionals in our industry. Yeah, that's probably you. We're going to probably knock on your door, broker or agent or manager, because we want to know more about you outside of the stress of real estate. We want to know who you are. And so that's what Real People, Real Talk is about. Our show will be on every Thursday, the third Thursday of each month. And I believe next month, October the 20th, is going to be our first official show. But listen, we thought that we would do something kind of like out there, like crazy. And we wanted to bring like a superstar champion to the stage to introduce our pilot show. And I want to introduce this guy. He is amazing. His name is Gov Hutchinson. And I know a lot of us have seen him. Come on. You've seen who Gov Hutchinson is, I'm sure. But I want to introduce him formally to you, because most of us really don't know some of the things that we're going to share today. But Mr. Gov Hutchinson is an assistant general counsel for the California Association of Realtors. Gov has been with CAR since 1985 and manages CAR's Member Legal Services program in Los Angeles. He advises realtors through the hotline on all aspects of real estate law, and he trains and supervises other hotline attorneys. Come on, you guys. I know some of us have probably called 2 and 3 and 4 times, so we should be pretty familiar with the hotline. But Gov, he received his bachelor's degree in history from Princeton University and his Juris Doctorate from the University of Pennsylvania. He has written for California Real Estate Magazine. He's co-authored CAR continuing education courses and is a master instructor for the education division of CAR with certification from the California Department of Real Estate. He also regularly speaks to associations, boards of realtors, affiliated associations. This guy's all over the place. City and the county bar associations and major real estate firms. And so without further ado, I would like to welcome our special guest today, Gov Hutchinson. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you, Stephanie. Great to be here.
Yes. I am so excited to meet. First of all, the accolades that I just read are just like out of this world. And we are so honored that you just are a part of our team. You're part of what we're doing as real estate agents to keep us out of the courthouse, right? That's your job.
Out of jail, yes. Out of jail.
Keep us out of jail. You know what? I don't like that word, jail. That's kind of scary. But I guess, as real estate professionals, that could be a reality for some, right?
Sometimes, not very often.
So I'm just curious, where did you grow up?
I grew up outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and you graduated from the University of Philadelphia, and you went to Princeton. Like, was that a dream of yours, or how did that come about?
Yeah, growing up, that was for some reason, the school I wanted to go to. Not Harvard, not Yale, Princeton.
What? Not Harvard or Yale? Come on, just Princeton? I mean, come on. What?
Well, it's in New Jersey. I was near New Jersey. So.
Okay, that's amazing. As I was thinking about questions, because again, this show is about real people, and one of the biggest things that we've been going through, obviously, is our pandemic. And of course, me in my kind of crazy mind, I was thinking about when the pandemic was announced, right? All of us, the day before everything shut down, we're just doing our business, and then when it was shut down, we're like, man, I need toilet paper. Like, how can I go get some toilet paper? It was just crazy. And so I'm just curious, like, where were you? What were you doing when that announcement was made?
I was just sitting in the office, and my life is usually constant travel. I travel constantly, And then our boss says to us, we're going to work from home for a while. And I'm like, how long? And it's like, we don't know yet. And said, what about all my traveling? He said, cancel it. So here I am.
Oh my gosh. So were you one of those people? I'm not going to blame. I'm not going to point to myself. But were you one of those people that like wasn't really prepared for the pandemic?
That is true. I was not prepared.
Yeah, most people weren't. I mean, I'm sure like most of us, and I keep saying toilet paper because I don't know about you, but that was like kind of crazy, all right? I mean, like, you go to the store and it's like one roll per family. Come on, really? and so did you have to, were there some things that you had to like quickly get in order, or were you just like, okay, I'm at home? What was going through your mind when that happened?
Well, I was very lucky
Okay.
because I have a fiance, and we weren't living together at the time, but we've been living together since. So I just said, I'm moving in, you're taking care of everything. And it all worked out that way. It worked out very well.
Okay, so that was our other question. Are you married? So ladies out there, come on, this is real talk, real people, real talk. I know people are like, well, is he married? Yeah, he's got a fiance. He's almost there. So that's awesome. So what are some things that you feel that you were doing before the pandemic hit that you weren't able to do, and you're just like, you know what, I don't think I need that anymore? Have you kind of gone through that like process of like eliminating things that maybe were important to you but not as important now?
Stephanie, I would say no.
Okay.
I miss all the things I used to do. I don't want to give up any of them. I don't
oh
know.
my gosh.
No, so I just like being out and about more. So that's the thing.
I think we're all kind of like there. Most of us are, we're sneaking away, going on retreats and travel and, different things like that, just to be, just more connected to people. And, to be honest, for me personally, I think that the pandemic has been a blessing. I know for me with, in real estate, we're constantly out there, just like yourself. We're showing homes, we're doing this. And I know that many of the realtors that are watching right now, we've had to really just alter our business and just the way that we do business and how we talk to people. And I even think, with our families too, we've had an opportunity to kind of just reevaluate some things when it comes to like what's important and what's not important. But that's wonderful. So you have a fiance.
Right.
Okay. And so are there any wedding dates?
Well, we were going to get married in May, and we obviously had to cancel. So we're just waiting till COVID is good enough that people will actually travel. You know what I mean? So we don't know.
So you don't know, man, it's like that doggone pandemic has just got in the way, way of everything. It's like, oh my God. This is a true story. My husband had just purchased a $200 gift card to Spa Envy for me, right? And I was literally getting ready to go to what is it? I think it's called Massage Envy. And then the pandemic hit. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we have to cancel your appointment. Okay, when can I rebook? I don't know. It's just like, it's like one of those crazy things. So you don't know when you're going to be getting married, which, hopefully as this kind of, we continue to find out what's going on, you guys will be able to get married and do your thing. Let me ask you this. I'm curious to know, was becoming a real estate attorney, was that your first career choice?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to be a lawyer, but I had no idea what type of lawyer. So I thought I'm going to be like Perry Mason, in the courtroom and arguing and all this stuff. And I thought that was going to do. And then I went to law school. Then I moved to California, and I started out along that path. And I said, I do not like fighting with people all day long. Right. I'm not the kind of lawyer that likes to fight. I mean, you need lawyers like that when you're in trouble, but that's not me. So I said, what else can a lawyer do other than fight people? Well, you can do deals, you can arrange contracts, and that's sort of good. But then I found out there's a place where you can actually spend most of your time just giving advice and teaching and helping. And that just sort of, I think I just fell into that. I think if I weren't a lawyer, I'd be a teacher.
That is so awesome. Well,
My mom and dad were teachers. My brother's a teacher. So.
Wow. So it just kind of lined up with your whole,
Yeah.
like, just family
Yeah.
purpose.
That's what I like doing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. As you were saying, you didn't like to fight. I'm thinking, man, we have a lot of realtors that probably need to become lawyers, because we got a lot. There's a lot of real estate professionals that like to fight, for people.
And you need that. If I want a realtor, I want a realtor who's going to fight on my behalf.
Exactly. So I know everyone is probably asking this question, because when I saw who I was going to be interviewing today, I was like, you got to give me the history behind your name, Gov. I mean, you got to tell us, is that the name that you were born with? Is that your nickname? Really?
It's just a family name. That's all there is.
Wow. So it's a family name. And is there an origin from where that name comes from, or?
There's an old English name called Gouverneur, and it was just like one of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence is a guy named Gouverneur Morris, but it was just shortened by my grandfather. So there you go.
It's so amazing, because I believe that names are so indicative of people's purpose. And it's just amazing how you were named Gov, and now you are in that type of system, with our professional real estate system, our government of real estate, which I think is just so amazing. Gosh, it's just amazing how things happen. Let me ask you this question. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
I'd be 30 years younger. That's all.
I think everybody online right now is like, I second that. You'd be 30 years younger, right? Okay. All right. So what's the significance?
Other than that, no.
No. Okay. So you'd be 30 years younger. Who now, hearing you say that, who would you consider your hero? Who's your hero?
Well, I read a lot of history and I follow politics, and my hero is probably Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Okay. And elaborate on that. Tell us why.
he was just a good leader. He was around a time of crisis, and I think he really came through in a time of crisis. And
that's awesome. That's a wonderful, wonderful pick. Do you have any regrets? Are there any regrets that you have in your life?
No, I should have moved to California sooner. Other than that.
Right? We should have bought that home when it was $30,000. That's the
right.
But instead, I bought it when it was $3 million. Okay, yeah. I think most of us probably have the same sentiment. We regret that as well. So what I'm going to do right now, before we turn it over to you, is I want to just give I want to do what's called rapid fire questions. And these are questions you have no idea what I'm going to say, but I'm just curious, and I know those that are watching are curious what your responses are going to be. So here we go. Video gamer or board games?
Board games.
Board games. Interesting. Well, I don't know. I somehow just saw you like in the videos, like when you're in your office, you're just like, okay, no. So, all right. M&Ms or Skittles?
M&Ms.
Okay. Balloons or flowers?
Flowers.
I'm so glad you said that. I was hoping, because I'm going to give you my address when we get off, and you can just send me some. Is that okay? Spicy or mild?
Mild.
Okay. Chest pump or fist pump?
Fist pump.
All right. Now, for those of you, maybe you don't know what the fist pump is, right? The chest pump is like this. The fist pump is like this. Okay, I like that. I was prepared to say next question because I didn't know if you knew what it is. So, all right. Spontaneous or planner?
Planner.
I'm not surprised. Because of your amazing life and just the things that you've accomplished, you've definitely planned well. So I would like to say thank you so much, Gov, for spending some time with me and just kind of letting our professional real estate industry get to know you a little bit better. So what I'm going to do right now, guys, we're going to turn it over to Gov right now so that he can go ahead and do the legal update. He has some hot stuff that's just coming off the press for us as real estate professionals. So I would suggest that you Tell your cat to go in the other room. Make sure your dog is not with you to be distracted. Close the door from your kids who are doing homeschool right now. Get your pen and your paper and start to take some notes, because what he's going to share with us is really going to help us in our business moving forward. So I'm going to give it over to you, Gov.
All right. Thanks, Stephanie. All right, people. What are we going to talk about today? Legal update, which for the last 6 months, that usually means COVID update, right? And I do have big news today. The main thing I'll spend most of my time on is the brand new rules on evictions and rentals. I know not all of you are landlords or tenants, but you got clients who probably have rental properties, and it's really important. That's not all I'm going to talk about, but that's the first thing I want to talk about. The background is, as you know, ever since March, the court system in California was closed for all evictions. No exceptions. Then on September 1st, the courts opened back up for evictions. But the same day that the courts opened up, the governor signed a brand new law affecting evictions in California. So in other words, the courts are open, but that doesn't mean you can do all evictions. So what's the deal now? Number one, commercial is wide open. There's no commercial evictions, commercial rentals, nothing has changed. But what about residential rentals? Well, if I want to evict under residential rentals, I want to evict my tenant on a residential property, which includes mobile home parks and mobile homes. So everything I'm about to tell you applies to houses, apartment buildings, renting space in a mobile home park, and renting, space in a mobile home in a park. So for these types of properties, what are the rules right now? Well, first of all, there's a new law that just took effect that lasts until February 1st of next year. So everything I'm about to tell you is good for the next 5 months. First of all, under what circumstances can I evict a tenant? Well, there's 2 reasons you normally evict a tenant, right? Because number one, they did something wrong. Or number 2, you just want to evict them because you want a new tenant, you want to sell the house, you want to do whatever. So there's eviction for fault and there's eviction for no fault. So what are the rules? Let's start with evictions for fault. What is it that you evict the tenant for? Well, you evict them because they don't pay the rent. Or you evict them for some other financial reason, like they don't replenish their security deposit, they're supposed to pay the utilities and they don't pay the utilities. One of their check bounces, they're late, they don't pay their late fees. So you can evict people for financial reasons, or the other type of fault evictions are if they do something else wrong. Like they violate some other terms of the lease, they sublet without permission, they have pets without permission, they damage the property, they create a nuisance, criminal activity, they commit waste on the property, they annoy the neighbors, they do something bad not involving paying rent. If it's any of those things, you can evict them right now, normal 3-day notice, just like normal. So you can evict for cause that doesn't involve paying money. You can do it normal process right now, 3-day notice to quit, 3-day notice to cure, breach of covenant or quit, just like normal. By the way, what about a seller, close of escrow, refuses to leave? You can just evict them. Seller agrees to rent back for a while. You can just evict them if they don't leave. Seller or tenant doesn't cooperate with you showing the property. 3-day notice, evict them right now. Those are all fault things. But what about the tenant who doesn't pay the rent? Can I evict a tenant right now for not paying rent? Well, not so simple. Normally, what do you do when a tenant doesn't pay the rent? You give them a 3-day notice to pay or quit. Well, effective right now, if you want to evict a tenant for not paying rent, you have to give them a 15-day notice to pay or quit. So there's a brand new form that just came out yesterday on Zip Form. It's called the Notice to Pay COVID Protected Period Rent or Quit. What does that mean? All right. Let's say someone owes you rent. If they owe you rent prior to March, right? They they owed you money in January and February, but you never got around to evicting them, and then the courts closed in March. You know what? You can evict them right now with a normal process. But what about tenant who's behind in their rent since March 1st? Since March 1st. Well, if you want to evict them for rent due since March 1st, you have to send them this new form. And my friend Ed just asked me for the code. This is the PRQCPP. PRQCPP. That stands for Pay Rent or Quit COVID Protected Period. What that means is any rent that was owed to you, the landlord, between March 1st and September 1st, there's a particular form to give them, 15-day notice. What if they owe you rent after September 1st, but before next February? There's a different 15-day notice form. It's called the TP, notice to pay rent, to pay COVID transition period rent or quit. So March 1st to September 1st is called the protected period. September 1st to February 1st is the transition period. What's the difference? Well, starting September 1st, tenants have to pay at least 25% of the rent, even if they have a COVID problem. So let me put this together. I'm a landlord. My tenant hasn't paid me since April. I send them this 15-day notice form, the PRQ-CPP, to pay rent during the protected period. They have 15 days to return to me a declaration of, it's called the Declaration of COVID Financial Distress, Form DCFD. And guess what? This form is attached to the 15-day notice to pay or quit. So if I got a tenant behind in the rent and I want to do something about it, I got to send them the form, the 15-day notice, and attached to it is the declaration. If they return that declaration to me within 15 days and they sign it swearing under penalty of perjury that they have a COVID reason they're not paying the rent, I got to step back. I can't do anything till February. Now, if they didn't pay me the rent in September, as well as before, I'm going to give them this other 15-day notice, which reminds them, even if they have a COVID reason, they still got to pay 25%. So what if they return the declaration within 15 days? Well, I can't evict them. But what if they don't pay the 25%? What if they send the declaration, I can't pay, and they don't even pay 25%? Well, at least I can evict them on February 1st. But you know what? If they pay the 25%, but they don't pay the rest, or anyone who didn't pay rent from April to September, listen to this, I can never evict them for not paying that rent. All I can do is sue them for the money. If they don't pay the 25%, I can evict them for that on February 1st, not before. But any COVID related, they couldn't pay for COVID reason from March to September, I can never evict them for that. And for rent from September to February, if they pay the 25%, I can't evict them. But I can sue them for the money. They owe me all the money. When can I sue them? I can sue them today if I want. But you know what? If I sue them today, I got to go to Superior Court. You know how the courts are backed up right now? You're not going to get a court date for like a year. So you know what you're going to do? On March 1st, you can sue your tenant for the back rent in small claims court, and there's no cap on the amount. I don't care how much rent they owe you, how many thousands of dollars. March 1st, you can sue them in small claims court for all the money. Obviously, if they don't pay the rent in February, even if they have a COVID reason, you can evict them. But you can't evict them for the back rent if they submit the declaration under penalty of perjury. You can only sue them for the money. Well, what if it's not rent that they owe me for something else like utilities or late fees or something like that? Well, there's two 15-day notices for that too. There's the notice to cure covenant during the protected period regarding a monetary covenant or quit, PMC CPP, or there's the notice to cure COVID transition period monetary covenant or quit, PMCTP. All these forms are grouped together in zip form in the COVID library. Okay, so there's 4 brand new 15-day notice forms. Notice to pay rent or quit prior to September, notice to pay rent or quit after September, notice to pay another financial obligation prior to September, notice to pay a financial obligation other than rent after September 1st. In all of these cases, if they return the declaration, you can't evict them until February. And as long as they pay the 25% starting in September, you can never evict them for that, but you can sue for all the money starting in March in small claims court. The declaration form comes with these 15-day notices. A couple more forms, completely separate from what I just said. If you're a landlord, residential, and you got a tenant behind in their rent since March, they didn't pay rent any time between March 1st and September 1st, there's a whole brand new different form you have to send them. It's called the NTRA, Notice of Tenant Relief Act of 2020. This is a disclosure form telling the tenants what their rights are. Even if you don't plan on doing this 15-day notice thing, even if you're just going to wait till February, you are required, it is mandatory that you give them this form right now before the end of September. By the way, when the courts, one of the courts actually opened for these evictions for pay rent or quit, October 5th. So even if you gave them the 15-day notice today, 15 days from now is approximately, that's when the courts are going to open for evictions for non-payment. So remember, if they don't return the declaration in 15 days, you can evict them 15 days from now. By the way, the 15 days, you don't count Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. So it'll actually be a little bit like October 10th or something like that if you sent the notice today. Okay? So that's a form. That form came out last week, the NTRA form. Send it to your tenant. By the way, if you're going to give a tenant a 15-day notice prior to September 30th, include the NTRA form with that notice. If you're not going to give them a 15-day notice before the end of September, you still have to send the NTRA separately. No, you can't use email to do this. You got to serve these forms just like you serve, 3-day notices or things like that. Okay. End of September, NTRA, all residential tenants behind in their rent since March. Okay. Now, those are the forms that came out. A couple more forms came out that you don't have to use that are kind of nice. You know what you can still do? Cash for keys. Tenants not paying, tenants behind in the rent. You can make a deal with them. Tell you what, I won't sue you for the back rent if you leave now. Or if that doesn't work, I won't sue you for the back rent and I'll give you a little extra money if you just leave now, right? Well, we got a new cash for keys form. We never had a form like that. It's the CRFP, Coronavirus Rent Forgiveness, Termination of Tenancy, and Possession of Premises Agreement. By the way, available on zip form and our website is a little summary of all these forms that I'm mentioning. They just came out. I barely looked at them myself. They just came out yesterday. But that's a new form. Plus, if you're lucky and you got a tenant who actually signs it, we have a rent repayment agreement where a tenant can actually agree to repay you over time, so you don't have to sue them all at once in March. I mean, we got a form if that works. Okay. So those are all the forms that just came out related to this. By the way, our 3-day notice forms have all been modified, and they say right on there that don't use this form until February. Don't use this form for non-payment of rent since March until next February. Remember what I said, though, if they owe rent for January and February, you can evict them right now. How about this? But let's get back to the beginning. What about a tenant, they pay the rent, they don't do anything else wrong, I just want to kick them out. Can I kick out a tenant? Well, from now until February, every tenant in California is protected by the just cause rules. Remember there's a new law this year we talked about at the beginning of the year that says California has rent control now and you can only evict a tenant with just cause. but it doesn't apply to single family homes or new construction or owner occupied duplexes. For the next 5 months, it applies to single family, it applies to new construction, it applies to duplexes. So under what circumstances, what is just cause? When can I evict a tenant today, even though they didn't do something wrong? Number one, you want to move in yourself or a member of your family, spouse, domestic partner, parent, child, grandparent, grandchild. Number two, you don't want to quit being a landlord. You just want to kick them out. You're not going to get new tenants. You're just not going to be a landlord anymore. Maybe you're going to convert it to commercial. Maybe you're going to, sell the property. You're going to quit being a landlord. That's grounds to evict. And then the third one is real good for realtors. Listen to this. You can evict a tenant right now if you're selling the house to a buyer who wants to live there. You can't do it until you're actually in contract with the buyer. But as soon as you have a binding purchase contract with a buyer who's going to occupy, you can send that tenant a 30-day notice or a 60-day notice right now. And if they don't leave at the end of that, you can evict them for that. Okay, so that's this last slight bit of good news. You can sell houses now with tenants in it and kick the tenant out so the buyer can live there. Two more things real quick I want to mention. If any of you guys, I forget where my audience is. I think some of you are in LA County though, or maybe some of you work in LA City. If the county or the city has its own eviction moratorium, the state one sort of supersedes that, but not completely. I'll give you an example. LA County moratorium right now goes to the end of October. So you can't evict anyone to the end of October, but you can't evict them till February anyway, so that's not really a big deal. But LA City, for example, says even when it's time to evict the tenant for non-payment, you got to give them 12 months to pay it. You know what that means? If I was an LA City landlord and I got a tenant who's not paying rent for COVID reasons, right? Well, I can't evict them. I can't sue them for the money next March. I got to wait until March of 2022 because LA City tenants have 12 months to pay back the back rent. Not LA County. If you're LA County, not LA City, no, I can sue them in March for all the money. I just can't evict them until November. But big deal, I can't really evict them until February anyway. So I'm just saying that in case any of you guys work in LA City, or if there are any cities around where you are, I don't think there are, that have very stringent eviction moratoria like that. By the way, before you blame the state of California for all this, keep in mind there is now a nationwide federal eviction moratorium on residential properties in the entire country. I don't care if you're in Tennessee or Texas or New Hampshire or Montana, you cannot evict a residential tenant now for non-payment of rent if they have a COVID reason for not paying. In California, do we have to worry about the federal law? No, because the federal law basically says any state that has its own law that provides greater protection to tenants than the state law, the local law takes precedence. So California law takes precedence because it gives more rights to tenants. For example, the California law, you can never evict a tenant for non-payment of COVID rent, whereas in the federal government, you can sue them, you can evict them on January 1st. Okay? All right. Let me just take a few questions. I'm going to look at the questions in chat real quick before I go on, because I know you have some good questions here. Okay. Commercial, do whatever you want. It's back to normal. Commercial is commercial. Commercial, no problem. Lucy, you have a good question. I'm going to try to get to it later. I just want to do all the eviction questions right now, if there are any. I answered the email question. Don't email the NTRA form. Bankruptcy is, nothing has changed with bankruptcy. Sometimes that results in the tenant not having to pay. Usually, in my experience, you can still get the money from the tenant. There may be a delay. No, you don't have to pay tenant moving costs if you want to sell. In other words, if you're selling the property, if you're evicting the tenant because you're selling to a buyer who wants to live there, no relocation cost. If you're evicting a tenant because you want to move in yourself or because you're quitting the business, you got to pay them a month relocation. If you're evicting a tenant simply because you want to sell the house to a buyer who wants to occupy, you do not have to pay them 1 month relocation. Okay? What if you evict Tom's asking, what if you evict the tenant when you go under contract? Good question. The tenant says on the purchase contract they're going to occupy. So you give the notice to the tenant. But the buyer's lying to you. The buyer buys the house and all of a sudden they don't move in. They get a tenant. The law doesn't address that, but I guarantee what would happen is that tenant would have a claim against the buyer. It's not the seller's fault the buyer lied to them. They're going to have a claim against that buyer who committed that they were going to live there. Okay? If you want to sell a duplex, can you evict the tenant? Well, yeah, you can evict the tenant from the unit that the buyer wants to live in, or you can evict them from the unit. I mean, if you're evicting you have a duplex and the owner lives in one side, the owner doesn't live in either side, yeah, they can evict the one that they want to move into, and they can move their grandkid into the other one if they want to. They have to have a reason, right? They have to have this. After February, you'll go back to owner-occupied duplex. You don't even need a reason. But right now, owner-occupied duplex or regular duplex where you don't live there at all for the next 5 months, you need one of those reasons to evict, okay? Saturday, Sunday, and holidays don't count for any of these notices. And by the way, I think I should make clear, if someone's on a lease, you always have to respect the lease. So even if you're selling the house right now and there's a tenant on there and the buyer wants to move in, you still can't kick them out till the lease is over, right? I was assuming when I said that, that's a month-to-month tenancy, okay? All right. Enough on this. I don't think any other questions on this. Let me talk about a couple other things COVID related. People ask me all the time about these rules. Are these rules going to change? Do I really have to follow these rules? Let me summarize the rules in 5 minutes. Rule number 1, no open houses. You can schedule showing after showing, but no open houses. What are the showing rules? Well, there's a state rule, and then there's the LA County rule, and then there's the LA City rule. The state rule, if you're not in LA County, is you can visit the property as long as you submit the PED form to the listing agent before you go in. Everybody wears a mask. No, you don't touch anything. You wash your hands before you go in. You stand 6 feet apart from anybody who you're not living with. And the buyers have to be from one buying party at a time. So there's no limit on how many buyers can be in there at a time as long as they're the same group. You know, it's the buyer's family. And if you live with someone, you don't have to stand 6 feet apart. But if it's, let's say you want your brother-in-law to come with you to look at the house, but you don't live with your brother-in-law, you got to see him 6 feet apart. You got to stand 6 feet apart from the agent and the seller if they're there. If you're in LA County, it's a lot stricter. 2 buyers, 1 agent at a time. And the occupant is supposed to be gone during the showing. Okay? Now, what do you do? Stephanie asked me a good question. You see all these people violating these rules, putting up open house signs and doing all this. First of all, you can call local law enforcement. I don't know if they're going to do anything. You can call the Department of Public Health. I don't know if they're going to do anything, but the DRE has finally started getting involved. They're starting to file cases. So yeah, call the DRE, call the police. You know what the real incentive to follow these rules are, though? You don't want to get sued. You know what's happening more and more now? Sellers have hidden cameras in their house. And they can see what's going on in the house during the showing. They see people touching things, taking off their mask, sitting down on the couch together to talk, and they see that the agent isn't cleaning the house in between showings. This is starting to happen a lot. So call the DRE, call the police, call the Department of Public Health. You don't want to get sued is the real reason to follow these rules, okay? Now, speaking of that, so the buyer's rules, right? Wear the mask, make an appointment, submit the PED, don't touch anything, wash your hands, blah, blah, blah. That's it. What about on the listing side? Well, here's the responsibility on the listing side. And by the way, the responsibility is not the listing agents. The responsibility to do what I'm about to tell you is the showing agent. Who's the showing agent? Well, usually it's the buyer's agent. But what if there is the buyer seeing the house without their agent, but the listing agent is showing them the house? In that case, the listing agent is the showing agent, right? Showing agent is who's ever showing the property. What is the responsibility of the showing agent? Number one, get there before the buyer, because you have to make sure when the buyer gets there, there are extra masks or hand sanitizer available if the buyer doesn't bring it. Plus, you have to turn on all the lights so the buyer doesn't touch anything, open all the doors, weather permitting, fires permitting, open a window, right? And then before the buyer gets there, you wipe down all the banisters, you wipe down the doorknobs, you wipe down the light switches, you wipe down the countertops, you wipe down the sink. And the part that nobody likes, you got to wipe down the bathroom too. Well, you don't have to do it. Get your 16-year-old nephew to do it. Somebody's got to do it. Can I just lock the bathroom so nobody can use it? That works. But what are you going to do if someone has to go in the middle of the showing? Send them to the backyard, right? Just kidding, just kidding. Anyway, you got to clean that toilet between each showing, like it or not. All right. Can you say no children? Yeah, that's reasonable. I mean, sellers can say whatever they want. They can't discriminate. They can't say, well, your kid can come in, but I don't like your kids. If they treat everyone the same and they don't want kids coming in, they can say no kids. Got to be real careful though, right? They can't refuse to sell to someone because they got kids. You got to treat it, that's discrimination based on family status. But as far as showing, yeah, the seller could say, if you treat everyone the same, they don't want children coming in. That's legitimate. By the way, if it is a child, they don't sign the PED form. The adult signs it on their behalf and takes responsibility, but they still got to wear the mask. What if they're 2 years old? Okay, they don't have to wear a mask. You know, I got a 3-year-old grandkid who, he loves wearing his mask. I don't know about the rest of you guys. Anyway, so those are the basic rules on showings. Nothing's changing. I mean, one day we're going to be able to do open houses. One day these showing rules are going to change. I think we're moving in the right direction. The COVID numbers are getting better. At some point, this is going to open up, but not yet. And don't ask me when, because we never get a warning on this. What about door knocking? Can I do door knocking? No, not yet. Can I mail flyers through the mail? Definitely. Can I drop off flyers in flyer boxes in the neighborhood? That's a gray area. I'll tell you why. The law says you cannot drop off paperwork at, you can't leave any paperwork behind at a showing. Not even the listing agent, not the buyer's agent, not the showing agent. You can't even leave it on the flyer box outside. Well, if I can't leave flyers at a house that's being shown, why should I be able to leave flyers at a house that's not even listed? I can see the argument, but I have to tell you, there's no specific law that says you can't leave flyers at houses that aren't currently listed. I'm just worried that if you do, someone's going to see it, report you, and they're going to say, well, you should have known better because you can't leave flyers at listed houses. What made you think you could leave flyers at not listed houses? But the law doesn't say that specifically, okay? Randy asked me a question. 60-day notice. You said you can have a 30-day notice. I think what I said, Randy, was 30 or 60. Listen to this. It's interesting. Not everyone knows this. If I'm selling my house and I want to evict the tenant who's there, How much notice do I have to give the tenant to leave? Well, if they've been there less than a year, 30 days. If they've been there more than a year, 60 days. But did you know that, and this is pre-COVID, even if the tenant has been there more than a year, if the buyer writes on the offer that they intend to occupy for at least 1 year, once that's on the contract, you can give that tenant a 30-day notice, even though they've been there more than a year. So it's not always so simple whether it's 30 days or 60 days. Okay? All right. Enough on the COVID rules. We covered door knocking, we covered flyers, we covered showings, we covered open houses. That's about all you need to know. Remember, there's that other real important form, the posted rules of entry form. That's the form where the listing agent has to physically post at the entrance to the property, right? Physically post at the entrance to the property. And it's got those pictograms on it. It doesn't have to be there. It only has to be there actually when the property is being shown. Or in my neighborhood, I see some people have them up all the time. That's fine, whatever. But that's a required form. So the PED form, the PED V, the visitor, right? Buyer, buyer's agent, appraiser, contractor, stager, any painter, anyone coming into the property while it's listed should submit the PED V form to the listing agent before you go in. You should do it each time you do it. And you should put the specific address on the form. Don't put any property in LA County or something like that. And you should send it as soon as possible before you go. If you're going to go at noon today, send it this morning. Well, can I send it the night before? You could, but sometimes people's health situation changes overnight, right? And the important part of this form is disclosing your current health situation. Listing agent, you have to submit the PED. Even though you're on the listing side, not the buyer side, you're still a visitor when you visit the property. The other PED form is the PED S. That stands for seller or occupant. So the person actually living in the property has to submit the PED S form to the listing agent. And you don't have to, you just do it one time. And you don't have to update, unless something changes with your health, you don't have to update it. Where on the visitor side, ideally, you submit a new one each time you enter the property, dated as close as possible to the visit itself. Here's an issue. Can I open my real estate office? Of course you can. Do we have to wear masks in a real estate office? Well, if the people in the office are just people who work there, just be 6 feet apart, you're okay. But if you invite anyone else into your office, clients, agents from other offices, vendors, well, you got to put on a mask. Everyone has to put on a mask while they're there. And the parts of the office where the visitors are allowed to go, you got to wear the mask in those areas even after they're gone. You know what else? You got to keep track of who comes into your office. You know why? Let's say someone comes into your office today. So you make sure you make a note of that. Make them sign in, make them say, yeah, I'm not sick, I have no symptoms. And then 2 days from now, this person calls you up and says, you know, when I came into your office a couple days ago, remember that? Well, guess what? I just tested positive today. Well, guess what you got to do, broker? You got to go back and attempt to contact everyone else who came into your office after that person came in a couple days ago to tell them, by the way, you were in my office soon after someone else was there who was COVID positive, who's now COVID positive, who might have been sick then. That's why you got to keep track of it. That's why you got to do these PED forms, right? Listing agent, you got to keep track of who comes into the house. Because let's say a buyer or a buyer's agent comes into the house today, they submit the PED form, they say they're okay. Then on Friday, they call you up and say, you know what, I just tested positive. You're going to have to go back, everyone who entered the property after this person did today, 2 days ago, and tell them, by the way, you were in the property after somebody who is sick. How far back do you have to go to do that? Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows. 14 days is the number everybody throws around. I don't know who came up with those 14 days. I don't know how. I would go back probably even further just to be safe. No, Ed, you don't need a PV form to enter an office. All I'm saying is keep track of the people who come in there, because you do have an obligation to do this contact tracing. But the PV is only for showings. It's not for visiting offices. If you want to do it, that's fine. If you want to require it, that's fine, but you don't have to. What about at time of inspections and walkthroughs? Do I need the PED form for them? For then? Well, here's the rule. During the time the property is listed, that's when you need the PED form. The listing is still in effect at the time of the walkthrough, right? It's still in effect at the time of the inspection, right? So you still got to do it. Now, if you're going to enter the property prior to the showing, prior to the listing, pre-listing visits, the rules don't apply. And after close, the rules don't apply. But during the time the property is available, that's when you got to do it. And Stephanie, I'm going to have to stop right now because I got to leave in a few minutes.
Yes.
Let me say one more thing, Stephanie. I know this association, this great association, is going to have this event, Real Estate Forward or something, in a couple months.
Yes.
And when I come back there, I'll tell you about all the non-COVID things, okay?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gov. We're so grateful that you've given us all that powerful information for us to be way better realtors than we are and just to be informed. And so, guys, I want to say, hey, that's all that we have for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to kind of see a little snapshot of what Real People, Real Talk is all about. Thank you so much, Gov, for allowing us to use you as a guinea pig. But hey, listen, I want to share with my real estate family out there. We want to see people just like you doing real estate, Real People, Real Talk. So if there's someone you'd like to suggest that we interview in your office, please let us know who it is. We want to get to know them, and we're going to have some fun. But anyway, thank you so much, everybody. Don't forget Real People, Real Talk. Talk show starts October the 20th at 2 p.m. and we want you guys to register. Thank you so much, Gov. We really appreciate you.
Let me say one more thing. Anyone who I didn't get to your question today, please email me govh@car.org.
Awesome. We love it. All right, sir. Thank you again. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.